We are continuing on with our NHL offseason plan series. Today we're taking a look at the 28th place team from the NHL regular season, the Columbus Blue Jackets. What should we expect from them? Will we see big changes this offseason? We'll discuss the possibilities coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, today we're looking at the Jackets and their offseason plan. Obviously, the Columbus Blue Jackets are a team that's quite different now than they were a year or even 2 years ago, and I think things are going to continue to change, but hopefully here for the better. So in this offseason plan series, we're taking a look here at their regular season stats as a team. We're taking a look at their salary cap space, expiring contracts, and then what we're calling the 5 burning questions that need to be answered for this franchise during the upcoming offseason. So let's first get started with a quick look at their team stats from this past year. So the Jackets finished with a record of 18, 26, and 12 for 48 points, finished with a goal differential of minus 50, which obviously is not really good at all. The Jackets at one point were looking like they might challenge for playoffs, but then really fell off in the second half of the season. Special teams were not great for them this year. The power play was relatively weak at 15.4% for the 27th best conversion rate in the league. And penalty killing wise, they only had a 79% success rate, which wasn't terrible, but not great. 21st best in the NHL. Heading into this offseason, they have a total of $25.8 million in salary cap space. Of course, we saw some big changes. We saw them part ways with head coach John Tortorella, who was on an expiring contract. They decided to mutually part ways. And then we saw them bring back former team president John Davidson, who was recently let go from the Rangers organization, to return to his role in Columbus, where he held that job for so long and worked so well. General manager Jarmo Kekalainen. So he's back with the Jackets and trying to get this team back on track. So now let's take a look here at what contracts these guys have to work with. We know they have lots of salary cap space, but they also have lots of names out there that need contracts and are quite interesting when you put it all together here. Now, topping the list on the team and on the RFA side of things is Finnish winger Patrik Laine, who they acquired earlier in the year for Pierre-Luc Dubois from the Winnipeg Jets. That was a massive trade and very well could prove to be costly. I mean, a lot of people suspected that Laine may not want to stay long-term in Columbus, and I guess we'll find out as contract negotiations get underway here in the offseason. With John Tortorella not being behind the bench any longer, I do think the odds of Laine sticking around are much higher. I'm not sure that he really was a great player for the way Torts liked to run his systems and how he liked his team to play, but getting a new head coach in there, I think they can tailor things around to make sure Laine wants to stay. It's worth their investment to get him on board here. On the RFA list, they also have Alex Texier, Kevin Stenlund, and Cole Sherwood. I suspect they'll all be qualified. Texier could still possibly be a big part of this team's future as well. On the UFA side of things, they have some interesting names, but it's debatable who returns. They have Mikhail Grigorenko, Zach Delpe, Stefan Matteau, Ryan McInnes, who's a Group 6 UFA because he didn't get enough games in. Defenseman Mikko Lehtinen, who they acquired from the Toronto Maple Leafs, who come over from Europe on a 1-year deal. I do think they will try to keep him. That, to me, would make sense. And also defenseman Michael Del Zotto. So outside of paying Patrik Laine some relatively good money, I would think, to kind of get back on track here, hopefully on a longer-term deal, they don't have a lot of expensive contracts to really look after. So that salary cap space that they have can certainly be put to good use to make other moves, whether it be through free agency or trades, to try to improve this hockey club. And I do expect here that Davidson and Kekalainen will continue to work at bringing in some more players who want to be Columbus Blue Jackets. Another big part of the 2021 NHL offseason for the Columbus Blue Jackets as well is going to be the 2021 NHL Draft. Now, this could be a draft where they draft multiple higher-level prospects, or it could be a case as well where they use some of their picks as currency to get some players who can help them out right now. Now, the Jackets are one of the few teams with multiple first-round picks. In fact, they have 3 of them. They have their own first-round pick, which will be in the top 10. I believe the worst they can do, depending on draft lottery luck or bad luck, would be, I believe, 7th is the worst they can go. So they're going to have a top 7 pick. And then they also have the first-round picks that belong to the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Toronto Maple Leafs that they've acquired via trades. So obviously, these are picks that are going to be lower in the first round. At this point, we don't know exactly if Toronto's going through the second round. It's looking like they are. As I record this, at least, they're heading into into Game 6 tonight against Montreal. And, of course, Tampa is already advanced, so they're at least second round. So they're going to be, at worst case, mid to late second round, but they could be really late if these two teams continue to win and make it to the Final Four. But still, they're first-round draft picks. They could get a decent prospect, or, like I said, they could be something that they consider moving, because those prospects coming later in the first round in the 2021 draft are players that will likely take a little bit longer to make it to the NHL, so they could opt to try to swing some trades and get some players that can help them immediately. Now let's take a look at the 5 burning questions on what other moves and other things that need to be addressed this offseason. Question number 1, who is going to be the head coach behind the bench? It's a big question, and it needs to be answered, and it should be answered here in the not too distant future. Now, of course, after Tortorella parted ways after a fairly successful long-term run, they're going to be going in a new direction. They've already been rumored to have interviews with guys like Gerard Gallant as well as Rick Tocchet, who are certainly experienced head coaches that are available as free agents right now. There's plenty of other big names out there as well. Debatable on who else they interview, but there is certainly lots of other interesting names out there. You could look at guys like Mike Babcock, Bruce Boudreau, just to name a few others that are well experienced and right near the top of the all-time wins list, for example. There's lots of successful coaches out there looking for work and interesting to get back in the NHL. So they'll have their pick of the litter if they want to go with a really experienced coach, or they could go with a younger, newer coach. There's all kinds of options out there. Debatable on which way they go. Considering how they started here with guys like Gallant and Tocchet, I'm leaning towards that they're probably going to hire an experienced guy. Just a matter of who they feel is the right fit. And I do feel like they're going to want somebody who can work with Patrick Laine. Now, Rick Tocchet might be a good example in that case. We've seen what he did with Phil Kessel. He is really good when it comes to his people skills and just dealing with unique types of players. It's something he's been known for as a head coach and an assistant coach for quite a long time, and he might just be the guy that Patrick Laine needs to really feel comfortable and allow him to play his style of the game and that he can communicate with and get along with here, and hopefully on a longer term basis. Now, outside of getting a head coach, to me, the next big question here, number 2, that's really important is, can they extend top defenseman Seth Jones? Seth Jones is going to be eligible for a contract extension, as his partner Zach Werenski. Now, the future of Jones, though, to me, is going to determine what direction this team goes in. Could they go more into rebuild mode and try to sell off some assets and gain more future younger assets? Or do they use that cap space that I mentioned and go more for, bigger moves, more established players, and go for more of, into free agency and see what they can do to become more competitive now? Obviously, Jones, if he decides he does not want to stay, because this team has had a really difficult time keeping players in the mix longer term, if he becomes the next guy that wants to leave when his contract is up, they might as well consider starting over and head more into a rebuild mode. Obviously, some of the other players they have to build around are great young players, but Jones is at the stage of his career where he's going to be wanting to win sooner than later. Obviously, he's had a taste of the playoffs. He's had a taste of being in the Norris Trophy conversation. He's a great player and somebody they can build around if he wants to stay. But what's the point of taking a chance of losing him to free agency like they've done so many other times in the past couple of years? We've seen top guys like Panarin leave, Bobrovsky, Matt Duchene, and many others have walked out on this team. They can't take that chance yet again with Seth Jones, and it's believed that they're already starting to have conversations. They're already in a situation where Jones is thinking long and hard if will be willing to negotiate an extension this offseason. And if that comes back and we find out that they're not willing to do that and Jones's camp wants to let it ride out, they're likely going to move him so they don't take the chance to lose him for nothing. And obviously now Werenski on the other side is a restricted free agent. They have more control in that case. They could also look at an extension for him, but at the same time, they don't have to worry so much. So it's less likely that they go down that road. They're going to want to do Jones first, in my opinion, before they go too far with a lot of other business here. And they should hopefully know the answer to that question relatively soon. The third burning question is, will they finally pull a trigger and trade a goaltender for a center iceman? This team needs help at the center position. They have 2 goaltenders signed on a decent contract who can both play at the NHL level and have been rumored to be on the move here for about a year. Either Jonas Korpisalo or Elvis Merzlikins likely gets traded this offseason and likely brings them some sort of a center iceman coming back, is my prediction. I know we've seen a rumor from Elliot Friedman as early as yesterday talking about a possible deal with the Sabres where Elvis could go to Buffalo for Sam Reinhart, and that is a real possibility. Now, that type of player is exactly what they need. Now, it may not end up being exactly 1-for-1. It may not even be a deal with the Sabres, but Reinhart is the kind of guy they need, somebody who can be a top 6 center and play with Laine. That's certainly the top priority after getting a Jones contract in place here. And I do think that this offseason is that time. They only have so many trade chips. They need a center, and teams out there that need goaltending, or if they do decide to trade Jones, for example, they could get the center that way. It really boils down to where things are at, but they don't have a lot of big-time trade chips, and they need to make the most of it. But I do feel this offseason we will see one of those goaltenders moved for help up front. Now, of course, as I mentioned, the future of Seth Jones is really important, but also in question number 4 is what's the future of Patrik Laine? Will they do a bridge deal? Will they do a long-term deal? Will he be traded? Personally, I think he stays. I think he'll have a good relationship with fellow Finnish GM Jarmo Kekalainen, a new head coach coming in. I think he'll be willing to give this a fresh start and give it another year or more before he really, starts to question anything. So I think personally, we could see another short-term contract for Laine. I don't think he put up the numbers he wanted. I don't think he put up the numbers he really needed to get that real expensive long-term deal anyway. So I personally think we're going to see a shorter-term deal with Laine, a new head coach come in, see how things go, and hopefully they can get him extended on the next go-around. That, to me, is the most likely scenario, but I do think Laine stays, and I think a short-term contract is the most likely outcome that we see in that scenario. Now, another big question as well is, do they go dip into free agency and bring back former captain Nick Foligno? Now, when Foligno was traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs at the NHL trade deadline, many felt there was a really high chance he would go back to Columbus as a free agent in the offseason. It's pretty much a given, regardless of how things go for him and the Leafs in the playoffs, that he's not staying in Toronto. There's no way they're going to be able to afford him as a free agent this offseason. It's very unlikely. So the odds of going into free agency for starters are really good. We know how much he and his family loved it in Columbus. He had nothing but great things to say. He's been there for a long time, and I do think that if the price is right and the deal is there at Foligno's mercy, that they're going to bring him back. I think they're going to want that leader, the leadership he brings, and he can certainly help mentor a lot of these younger players that they're going to hopefully have working with him here going forward. But I do think that's a real possibility that Captain Nick Foligno could return via free agency this offseason. I think free agency is something that we're not going to see a ton of with this team. I think Foligno would be the main piece. Other stuff would be done via trade. I'm not sure how competitive they're going to be next year. It really boils down to how these pieces work out and how things fall. But I do think we're going to see Kekalainen and Davidson be aggressive to get this thing back in order here. I don't think Columbus is a team that's going to want to continuously be in the lottery. They've been a team that's like a fringe playoff team now for a while. They need to take some steps forward, but it's going to take a while. It's not going to be easy. I can see them being in on trade talks for a guy like Jack Eichel. Maybe it's not Reinhart and Buffalo that they target. Maybe Eichel's a guy too. I mean, I know for starters that they will at least be having conversations around that. I don't know if they can pull it off. I'm not sure they really have the assets, but still, the Jackets are a team I expect big moves from, or at least big attempts at moves, and we'll see how things go. But Foligno is an easier deal that should be able to get done. So let me know what you feel are the top answers to these questions for the Jackets. What do you expect from them this offseason? How much better can they get for next year? Let me know down in the comments and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We have more videos coming in this series as well as all the news and rumors for all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.